got one counselor in person, and we've got, wait, how all do we have here? I'm using a different platform too. So we've got Anton, we've got me. Is Michael on or not?
Yeah.
Okay, I just can't see him.
For some reason, I'm not getting any sound. I've got a picture of everybody, but I'm not getting any sound. Not sure why.
David Berner, I think.
What no call-in number is this?
Let's see.
Is Kelly not here?
She's not.
Okay, there we go. Now I see it.
This might see Jay's trying to get in. Well, I'm not sure. It may just be a bust.
I can get more here in a second, I think.
Okay.
Okay. Well, should I just keep kind of charging through this maybe?
Yeah.
All right. So we have all the counselors other than Counselor Swearingen,
Says
who
microphone's on.
sadly couldn't be here tonight. So we'll continue moving through. That's our roll call. Open forum. Patrick or any counselors, do you have any items for the open forum?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Patrick.
Just a moment here. All right, this is from Luke Gallstrand. Dear Grand Marais Planning Commission, in response to a request for feedback on the Hamilton Habitat rezoning request, our business, Fine Finish Paint and Coatings, is opposed to the request for rezoning. We have no opposition to Hamilton Habitat as such, but the rezoning requirement for a change to a 50-foot setback on our property is not acceptable. We are commercial industrial with setbacks already established. We purchased this property for this reason. There's little property available in this county for service businesses to operate in a legally zoned manner. The proposed setbacks would make our zoning irrelevant. This will have negative impacts on our plans for future development. Perhaps they could get a variance that would not necessitate a change for us. Thank you for your consideration. Luke Gallstrand and Ryan Mixdorf of Fine Finish Paint and Coatings, LLC. I've got two more here. This one is from Meryl Skinner. Greetings, commissioners. My comment might be too late, but I'm writing this in support of Hamilton Habitat's rezoning request. We need affordable housing, and this is an opportunity to make that happen by changing the zoning to residential. Thank you for your consideration and the work you do, Meryl. And
one more.
Finally, yep. Attention, Grand Marais City Council. This is from Donnie Lyson. I would like to state to the council my opposition to the proposed zoning change for the Viking Plumbing / Hamilton Habitat project. The increased side lot setback from 10 feet to 50 feet would affect approximately 16,000 square feet of my property. This would adversely affect my ability to develop or sell to others to develop my commercial property. I believe this would decrease the value of my property without compensation. I also want to inform the council that I was never notified about this proposed change until another affected landowner called me on Friday, May 7th. I never received any communication from City Hall or the Planning Commission. Thank you, Donna Lyson, property owner, ID 80021117. That's all I have.
Okay. Do any counselors have any other open forum items? Hearing none, we'll close the open forum and move on to the consent agenda. One of the things we want to add to the consent agenda is the permit application for the high school graduation parade. We received that application after the packet went out, and they are asking for a permit that matches the activities that happened last year. So we'll just run through quickly the things on the consent agenda. If we want to pull anything for discussion, we can. So we have this meeting's agenda. We have the previous meeting minutes, the payment of bills, The AFLA design contract is the contract that the council agreed we wanted at the last meeting. And park hires are recommendations for hiring for summer staff from Dave Tiersteg at the park. So if anyone would like to pull anything for conversation, now is the time to say so. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Okay,
Seconded.
there's a motion. Motion and a second. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll call vote. Anton, your vote.
Aye.
Michael, your vote.
Aye.
Craig, your vote.
Aye.
I am an aye as well. Motion carries. Moving on. Planning Commission report. Okay, so we've got three things. We're going to handle each of these individually. And we will need, these each have individual ordinances or resolutions for them.
Jay,
Yeah?
can I just ask everybody to mute their mics unless you're speaking or want to talk, just because I'm getting a whole bunch of feedback.
And Patrick, maybe you can manage that too. You probably have the screen. You can see who's open.
Yeah.
You can, yeah, I'm sure you can go through and mute people if their mic's open. Thanks for that, Anton. I was getting some feedback too, but it's probably not as bad for me on my phone. Okay, so let's take the first one. So the first one is Resolution 2021-02, Paddock Kintop conditional use. So this is a conditional use permit for the, well, I'll just use colloquial knowledge, the old Valley House bed and breakfast, to convert the 4 rooms in the bed and breakfast into long-term rental space, studio apartment basically, for those 4. And I don't know, Michael, if you want to say a little bit about each of these. You were, at these meetings. You certainly can. Otherwise, we can just proceed through them as they are. So go ahead.
Okay. Just that first one, the Valley House, they're basically becoming more conforming. And so it's all for the good. It's more housing. There's no downside in my mind to it. And just looking it over and parking and everything, they've kind of hit all the things that we've asked in the past. So that looks good.
All right. Does anyone have any other questions or thoughts on this resolution for the Paddock Kintop conditional use permit? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution. I don't know if we're there yet. Maybe we are.
I would so move.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion on resolution 2021-02? Hearing none, go through the roll call vote. And Craig, I know you're in person there. If at any moment you're not getting through, just, either have Patrick yell at me or something, because I'm just want to make sure that you're
That's good.
getting a chance to comment if you need to.
Yep.
Okay, so roll call vote. Anton, your vote.
Aye.
Michael, your vote.
Aye.
Craig, your vote.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Resolution 2021-02 passes. Let's move on to the next one. Resolution 2021-03, the Westerlind variance. And Michael, I'll just give a summary for this. You let me know if there's any other information we need to know. This is for a deck on the on this house that would be within the setback. And there was one comment in support from a neighbor, and other than that, it's complying. It meets the criteria. Does that sound right, Michael?
Yeah, just 2 other points would be that the house relative to the houses around it is actually set back further than a lot of them, and looking at where some of those decks are, it's kind of like, okay. And then the other thing is actually there was a deck there before it was torn off, and this is replacing that.
Okay, any other questions or comments on resolution 2021-03 or a motion in support?
I would so move.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote. Anton, your vote.
Aye.
Michael, your vote.
Aye.
Craig, your vote.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Resolution 2021-03 carries. Moving right along. Next one is ordinance. This is an ordinance now. It's a rezoning request. 2021-04 for Hamilton Habitat. So this one we have quite a few people here at the meeting who have interest in this conversation. So I will give a brief summary of this. We've heard some public comment about this in the open forum. And then Michael, if there's anything you can add, certainly can. I spoke with Councilor Swearingen about this before the meeting as well. So I have some feedback from her as well. And we can go from there. So this ordinance would be rezoning for a piece of property that would be redeveloped for housing. So in the planning and zoning findings, they approved this 4-0 on the stipulation that there was positive feedback from the property owners adjacent. And this is rezoning from commercial to residential, which would reduce the, it would increase the setback, but would allow for residential practices there, such as building homes. I just had a little bit of a brain fart. The concerns from the other property owners are that they will negatively impact their properties adjacent to the property that would have homes built on it. So that's what I know about it. Michael, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, the thing I would add is that we weren't necessarily looking for a positive response. We just wanted to clarify to those landowners what will happen once that section there is turned into R1 to their own property. Because the way our zoning regulations are set up, they don't really talk about it that way. They talk about industrial moving into R1, not R1 moving into industrial. So that's not something that's automatically there. And on the face of it, like if I were the landowner next door, I wouldn't necessarily know that just because I got a notice saying it. So it was really that we wanted everybody to know what was happening. So it didn't have to be positive, but we wanted them to know.
Okay. And Michael, maybe you can answer this question. When I read through the ordinance and through the findings from the Planning Commission, I was curious as to why the zoning didn't just focus on the Hamilton Habitat property, or that property that they're looking to build homes on, and included the properties around it.
So I'm not sure I'm understanding the question entirely. So you want to know why we were looking at the properties around that property?
Yeah, because the Hamilton Habitat property is the one they're talking about building homes on, and the two landowners on either side who gave us public comment on it, their properties are impacted by this. Is that impacted their properties aren't getting rezoned themselves? It's just the impact of the setback from the residential zone.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to point towards. So once that becomes R1, it means that those industries on either side now they'll be they're non-conforming, but they're permitted non-conforming is what would happen, because they are supposed to locate their buildings within the industrial zone 50 feet from that line, as opposed to 10 feet, which it is now. So once that line becomes R1, like they're abutting R1 now, and so that makes it 50 feet.
I got you. I'm following where you're putting it.
Okay.
That's an interesting problem to have, isn't it?
Right. And I think that's why we were very much wanting people to know, the property owners to know what was going on, because as much as the planning and zoning group commissioners were, very positive about the idea of having the housing, but we also wanted to make certain that everybody understood what was going to take place in that area and how it would affect them going forward. Yes, so it is difficult because, as we know, housing is critical, but we are impacting businesses that are already there.
Here's a question that might be a question for Mike, but it could be for you, Michael, as well, as people who know more than I do about the zoning ordinance. Is there any other mechanism that we could use that would allow for the development of housing in that space without impacting the properties around it?
Boy,
I mean,
I think there's a lot of different mechanisms we could use to allow housing to be built there, but there aren't any that wouldn't affect the properties around it in one way or the other. So, and even if this is approved, there's going to be further special permission required to develop it the way that they're going to want to develop it because of the dimensions of the property. Even with the new zoning requirements, there's some dimensional issues getting 2 lots wide on this. And then, of course, if it's split into 4 pieces, quadrants, then 2 of them will not be adjacent to a public street, which is also a requirement. So there's going to be some work required, even if this rezoning goes through, before there's an ability to actually develop this property. And I think that is going to be the case no matter what method we decide to go forward with.
Okay. Boy, I guess I'm kind of stuck on this one. I don't know if any other counselors have any questions or any other thoughts on this one, or any feelings. I can also share what Counselor Swearingen shared with me before the meeting. I don't know if that's appropriate because she's not here to share it herself, but
yeah,
she shared it with me.
I would like to hear that for sure, Jay. I was hoping to confer with her tonight because we were the ones who were thinking that we were going to be able to hash things out once we got to the council meeting after planning and zoning. So, yeah, I would like to hear what she had to say.
Okay. Well, good. I'm glad that I'm glad that's clear. I didn't want to be speaking for her. She mentioned it was a pretty brief comment. She said that in light of the comments that came out, that she would oppose the rezoning ordinance or the rezoning application as it is presented. And I think that just to be sure that I'm saying what she said, I won't say anymore. But that's what she said. Due to the comments, that she would oppose it. So that's her feedback. My preference on this, and I totally understand now, Michael, thank you for explaining that a little bit better. I understand now why this is impacting the properties around it. And I don't know what the rest of the council think about this, but I would like to send this back to the Planning and Zoning Commission to see if they can figure out another way to do this, like to figure out a way that this could be worked out a little bit differently, so that it doesn't impact the properties around it so much. It's tricky. It's really tricky. So I don't know what the rest of the counselors think, or if anybody else has any other takes on this. I totally am, I'm excited by the prospect of the housing.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm just, after reading the recommendation of the Planning Commission, I'm somewhat confused over the fact that this is a rezoning request, and not hearing from adjacent property owners, but voting 4-0 to approve based on getting property owners, it's kind of like, I don't know why they even voted. I think they should have.
Well, Craig, I can speak to that a little bit. I did speak with Luke about that, and what he told me was that when he received the notice that said, "Hey, we're looking for comment on this," he read through it and he said, "Well, this is great. They're going to develop houses," and he was like, "All right, I don't have a problem with that."
He didn't
And
realize it.
he didn't realize that there would be an
Impact,
impact on
right.
his property. Yep.
Okay.
Because they're not actually rezoning his property. It would just be the impact into his property from that. So,
I also think
that's,
the planning commission wanted to allow for this to move at pace if there wasn't any opposition to it. They didn't want to
Okay.
hold it up unnecessarily.
Okay.
But, so they wanted to pass it on, understanding that there was the chance that you were going to have a difficult conversation at the council meeting.
Right.
Yeah,
Well-
that's exactly right. You know, we did want it to move along and that's why we wanted to make sure that we'd already sent out the letters, but we wanted to make sure, since we hadn't heard anything, we wanted to make sure that those landowners had an opportunity to really understand what was going to happen with their properties. And to give, Councilor Swearingen and I an opportunity then to know which way to go. Like what did those landowners think about it? Because we were both very positive, but we also wanted it to be, positive all around, or at least palatable.
I have a question. Is it a good time for that?
Yeah, shoot.
yeah, I mean, I feel like you can ask a question right now, Steve. I mean, I feel like we have, at some point, I'd like to hear more from where the counselors are at with this, if they want to send it back to planning and zoning, or if we want to chat about it a little bit more here. But if you have some information, you can certainly pass that on.
Well, my question is, could she accomplish the same thing, Anna, if this were to remain zoned commercial with a variance to put houses on it? I mean, there's a lot of commercial properties in Grand Marais that have, for instance, a store with an apartment above it. There's a lot of residents in commercial areas. So if we could get a variance to build houses on a commercial lot, that wouldn't affect the neighbors. Or maybe a conditional use permit for houses on the commercial lot. If we left the zoning the same, yet allowed houses to be built, we could accomplish that without hurting the neighbors.
Yeah, and that, Steve, is one of the things, that would be the reason why I would recommend we send it back to the Planning and Zoning Commission, because they're the folks that it's their responsibility to take a look at the planning and zoning documents and try and figure out how to make this stuff work. I mean, I guess it's not really their job, but they're the ones who have a more intimate relationship with that document to be able to do that. So I think that's a really innovative idea. I'm not sure how that would work, but my preference would be to have the Planning and Zoning Commission work on that and then see if we can hash that out there, where they actually are sitting down with the document, have it open in front of them, or ready to roll with it and try and figure out what the solutions could be. I mean, that's my preference.
No, I think you're onto something, but if we involve the city attorney, she could interpret that and explain it probably better than certainly I could,
We're fortunate
Jay,
to
could
have a
the-
city attorney.
Could I make a comment on
or
that
county,
quickly?
I guess.
Yeah, Chris, if you want to make a comment.
So you can't grant a use variance. So that's illegal to do that. So that's not something that could be considered here. What they could consider is they could consider amending the zoning ordinance for the commercial district, and you could amend it to add as a permitted use certain types of residential. Now, obviously, if you do that, that impacts every commercial district in the city. And so that decision means that you're looking at potential commercial, however you define that, related, in those areas. That doesn't change the fact that in one way, shape, or form, you actually have to make a decision on this particular application one way or the other. So a decision has to be made on it. Now, if you decide that, well, you know, we would rather send this back to the Planning Commission, direct the Planning Commission, or ask the Planning Commission to look at amendments to the commercial district where there might be options to do residential, I mean, one of two things has to happen. The applicant either needs to withdraw their application or the council would need to deny that application. Now, the council has significant discretion with a rezoning to either approve or deny. And so the decision standard for denial is obviously you apply the criteria in your zoning, but the primary decision mechanism for a rezone is, did the council have a rational basis to deny the rezoning? Now, coupled with that is the 60-day rule. The 60-day rule means that you have to either grant or deny a land use application within 60 days from the effective date that the application was filed. Now, you can extend that for another 60 days. So if you are going to send it back to the Planning Commission, we would need to extend that 60-day period as well.
Okay, because what was the day that they made put in their application? Let me see here. I'm looking it up.
April 16th or April 16th.
Okay. All right. That's really helpful information, Chris.
And I have a question for Mr. Hood. What about the zoning considering changing the setbacks for commercial when they abut residential? If the setbacks are affected, that seems to be the argument, that they're 50 feet, and I don't blame them. I mean, 50 feet is like theft. But if that was changed, if the setback from commercial to residential wasn't so huge, would that be a consideration for the zoning? I mean, is that a possibility?
Jay, would you like me to respond to that?
I can respond to this a little bit, and then if that's not a good enough answer, then Chris, go ahead and fill in the blanks. The 50-foot setback for that zone, or for the one that we're talking about, was put there for a reason. So we'd have to take a look at whether or not we'd be willing to accept that, a different standard in our community. Not saying that we would or wouldn't, but that is definitely that's an interesting suggestion, Anna. And I would like, Chris, if you could agree or disagree with me, that I believe that the discretion to make changes like that does fall within the council's powers to do that. Like we can change those setbacks. We can change them in specific situations, but we have to make sure that that's something that we actually know the impacts of what we're talking about doing. Am I correct, Chris, or not?
That is correct. You could change the setbacks. Obviously, changing the setbacks, again, you have to look at that through the totality of that zoning district in terms of what those impacts would be. Because obviously, if you change the setbacks, then you have, commercial businesses that are closer to residential. There's the potential that you may have people moving into those properties who will then subsequently complain about the commercial being noisy. Now one could argue that, well, they bought a house right next to a commercial district, and again, kind of you get what you go in with your eyes open. So I mean, there is obviously you would have to weigh that, but yes, that is an option. I mean, another potential option for the Planning Commission to look at would be, as opposed to having, this particular, all commercial districts in the cities change, you could look at, okay, let's redefine the entirety of this particular area as a new zoning district. And in this new zoning district, we then can define what's going to happen. So, I mean, as Mike indicated, there are lots of options related to how this could be done. But, you know, a lot of those things would take some time and have to be explored.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Chris. Does anyone else have any other counselors have any questions about this or any concerns?
Well, one concern I have is what Mike brought up. There are a few other roadblocks moving ahead with our current zoning if this does become residential. So have those been looked into? Is it, does it add more negativity to the process? Can those, you know, hurdles be jumped over? Can they be, I mean, is there more conditional use permits that are gonna have to be applied for to
Potentially, but
get,
certainly more
to get 4
variances.
houses in there? Is it gonna comply with what we currently have set up?
I don't think so. And,
No, see, that's the-
I mean, we can't really answer that question until we see a specific development proposal.
Okay.
And to put one of those together is going to take some time and resources that I think, you know, somebody might want to have an idea that there's a path forward that's a favorable one before they did spend time and resources on it.
Well, does any other counselors, any other thoughts?
I guess there are a couple points to things that folks have said. I mean, I think that, you know, the feedback from the 2 of the 3 affected property owners, definitely, you know, I guess if I had a commercial property, whether I've had it for 5 years or 50 years, and, you know, 16,000 feet, I think was what Don had said would be the impact on his property. And that's a lot. You know, I think Anna would agree with that. I don't think anybody would feel good about that. So I think that if the other option is, you know, working, you know, if the council and the planning commission decided to change the CI district, because again, it's all of them, right? Not just this parcel to allow housing. I mean, there's widespread, I mean, that would be to look that over and see what the implications of that would be to allow housing. But I guess if I had to, as for a residence, had to pay commercial taxes on my house, you know, it would stay in the commercial district, which means it would be I mean, I don't even know how that works. Can you homestead a commercial property as a, you know what I mean? Like, it's just it's the tax side of it. I don't see how that works. You know, I mean, again, I appreciate what Anna is trying to do, but I just, you know, that workaround, I don't know how that, if we could get through all the hurdles of like, okay, well, maybe we can allow this. Maybe this is something that's going to happen on more and more properties. But if it's going to then stay commercial, like, what does that mean to the impact of like the, you know, workforce or, you know, affordability or whatever the, you know, the phrases that we're using? I mean, I'd assume that it would remain high, higher than a property that would be able to be homesteaded, right? In the residential district. So, you know, I mean, I guess my fear of if the adjoining property owners, adjacent property owners' feelings and impacts notwithstanding, I think the idea of doing it is a great one, but I think that the point at where it's at, if we make a drastic change of turning it into residential, which has a negative impact on the adjacent property owners, and then when they do say, like, we make this first step, right, which is what Mike was just saying, they want to, before they go to the next step of trying to figure out, okay, how can we do this? What if they realize that they can't? I mean, maybe they've got it figured out, right? But then I guess if that's great, I'd love to see that. But if they don't, like, then we run the risk. Now we've got this weird R1 chunk taken out of the CI district, which had a negative impact on adjacent property owners. And, you know, I mean, so I guess I'm I'm not saying that I'm against like the idea of what's happening. I just, again, question and I understand how difficult it is to try and find properties that work. And I don't know if shoehorning this in, and I totally love to hear what you have to say. And but I guess those are my points. You know, I take a lot of to heart of what, you know, the letters that we got have to say. Go ahead, Anna.
Well, let me say, number one, I don't want to piss off the neighbors. I appreciate where they're coming from. I don't want to take 50 feet, 1,600 feet. I don't want to do that. I understand where they're coming from. And I think Jim does too. Jim has a whole different issue. You know, there was some residential, commercial property next to him, Matt Gross property, that was rezoned residential, and Jim was never notified. That's Jim issues, not mine. So Jim, you need to address that. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. However, I do not believe in forcing this through. I wouldn't be happy doing what I'm doing if I knew the adjacent property owners were not okay with what I was doing. Number one, regardless of the hurdles I have to go through, that isn't how I roll. However, let's talk about the commercial. We talk about affecting commercial property in the future. I personally believe that the commercial zone is less more important than the residential zone in the city. You look at all the commercial properties in this city right now. Look at where they are in proximity to residents. Every single one of them. You could spit and hit each other. Number one. And I'm not making an argument, I'm making a point. If we're looking at valuing commercial zoned property versus residential, what do we need more? This is for the city. This is for you guys. This is what I want you to look at. And what's the reality of us expanding out and having more commercial property versus needing housing? That's all I want you to think about. It's not even about this necessarily. It's more of a point I want to make. You know, what do we need? Do we need more businesses with employees that we can't house? Is that what we need? Hello. Anyway, that's all. I want you to know that Jim has his own issue. Jim, you need to deal with that one. I am just wanting to do some housing. I don't want to make the neighbors mad. I don't want to take any property away from them. If there's a way, maybe we can change some setback for commercial, I'm in.
So Anna, thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's really helpful to understand where you're at with it too. And, you know, like Anton said, I don't think that anybody on the council is going to say anything negative about the work you're doing. I mean,
no.
There's a problem and you're working on it, and it's great and we love it. And let's try and figure out how we can make it work. So here's what I will do. And I want to just make sure that you understand where I'm coming from too on this, is that what I'm getting from all this conversation is that the mechanism that we're using for the rezoning for that property is not going to make the neighbors happy. And and that's not the way you want to do business. So I'm going to make a motion to deny this request on the understanding that we can work with the planning and zoning to look at what all the rules for those zones are that are preventing the development of housing in them, and or how we even deal with the commercial zone. Like you say, you know, we're running out of space for houses. And we did this housing study that shows where we have open spaces that we could develop housing on. And you know, that there are some concentrations of space there, but they're in places where we don't really allow it. So I do believe that, you know, I'll make that motion to deny this ordinance on the understanding that we will work on that so that we can try and unlock more of this property in a safe way to develop housing. Because what Chris Hood said too, I take very seriously, that we also want to make sure that any place that we identify as residential is a place that people can live, and that there's actually like a good condition for living. You know, the Fine Finish guys, when I was talking to Ryan and Luke when they first bought that property, part of the reason they bought it is because they were really concerned about the venting from their from their spray booth, and how that would impact people who were downwind of them. So there's definitely concerns about having commercial adjacent to residential, but I do think we can probably figure something out. So that's kind of where I'm at. And Jim, I see you raising your hand, and I'm not certain if the complaint that Anna brought up about not being informed of changes, if that's appropriate to discuss with this ordinance rezoning question. If it's connected to this discussion, then I do believe it as being appropriate. But I want to make sure we stay on this ordinance so we can do it justice. So, do you have something there, Jim?
Yeah, I have three things. First of all, all the properties between the Gunfin Trail and where number 7 and 61 come to a point have never been regulated in the past. Lot sizes were whatever people wanted. There was no zoning commission to say, hey, you have to have a legal size lot, you have to do this in a certain way. And just because of the nature of how that land comes to a point, all these lots are irregular. You have a mixture of both business and residential all through that whole section. There's commercial right next to residential all the way through that section. It just seems to me that there should be some way to work this out. Seeing we already there's a residence right next to my property. I don't think it's 5 feet from my property. And that was put in last year and nothing was said to me about that. Do I have a 50-foot setback from that now? I don't know if I do or not. Nobody said anything to me about that. And so, I just think to be fair and to consider that whole section of land there between the Gunfin Trail and where it comes out, 7 and 61 come to a point. Look at that whole area and look what's there. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Jim. I think that you make some interesting points that we can definitely keep in mind.
Mayor, can I make a comment?
Yep, go ahead.
So if you want to move forward with, if the council wants to move forward with a denial and you're looking at a motion at this point, the motion, because we would need a resolution of denial that would be drafted. So the motion would be to direct staff to bring back a resolution of denial at the next council meeting. And then you would act on that resolution of denial at that point in time.
Okay. And they brought this up, Chris. They brought this to the council in April. And so we're a month in. We've got 6 months to do this. I don't want this to go 6 months. I'm just trying to figure out how the most streamlined way of doing this would be. If we send this back to the planning, this has to be approved or denied in its own right, whether we do anything different or not.
Unless the applicant withdraws the application. That's the only other option. Otherwise, it has to be approved or denied, yes.
Okay. Well, that kind of puts you in a weird spot, Anna. We won't ask you to do anything you don't feel comfortable doing, because we can certainly go through and do that, do a resolution. But we have to make sure that we dot our I's and cross our T's, so we're doing everything the right way too. I do think you have some pretty significant support on the council, and maybe Michael can speak to, I guess he can speak for himself. But if we address or send this back to the Planning and Zoning Commission to, work with you to figure something else out, that, I don't know, that's just kind of an odd situation. We're trying to figure stuff out here. We're trying to make this work. So I think that's a step in the right direction, but we got to figure out what the next step is.
Well, if it would benefit, I don't know. So we're looking at, since we really don't know what we're doing, which is what you're saying, that we got to go. Well, to some degree, you don't know how to redo. You have to rethink this. You have to figure out some alternatives. And you just said how I can proceed and accomplish what I want to accomplish. We're looking at quite a bit of time, are we not?
I don't know. That depends. We'd have to figure out when the next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting is, and then put this on the agenda for that. I think what we've figured out is that the ordinance for rezoning that we've identified that we're talking about right now is probably not the right way to do this, and that we have to figure out another way to do it. And if I understood Chris Hood right, what he's saying is that there's two ways we can deal with this. One is that the city council can go through and write a resolution of denial, and then we can deal with this at the next meeting. Or you can withdraw, and then then we don't have to do the resolution. To me, it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen another, because we can still tell the Planning and Zoning Commission to get to work on this either way we do it. So it's
Jim,
yeah, go ahead.
I think for both of our sakes, at this time, I'm going to withdraw, and it's not because I don't want it, but I'm going to withdraw based on the fact that the city zoning is going to work on. I mean, I'm not far, and I still want it. Jim knows I want it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'll go
Jim
along with
wants
whatever
me
you
to
want.
have. So Jim and I are on the same page, but obviously there needs to be some things worked out. I do not want it forced. I don't want it forced down the neighbor's throat. I want there to be some middle ground somewhere for this to be possible. Right?
Yeah, and we can. You go ahead.
I just want everybody to know. I know who's supportive. I appreciate that. I appreciate the support. I'm not questioning the support on this project, you guys. I appreciate it. I just zoning needs some work. That's all there is to it. We talk about a shortage of this and a shortage of that, but what the hell are we going to do about it until zoning does something about it? So there you go.
Yep, and I think we're going to keep rediscovering things like this. I mean, the changes that we put to the zoning ordinance in the past year opened up a lot of opportunities, but this one is one of those opportunities that wasn't covered. So, the Planning and Zoning Commission has got it on their brains to make things, more accessible. So let's put them to work on it. I think that's probably the best way to do it.
All righty. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming, Anna, Jim, Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Anna.
Thanks, everybody. Night.
So, Mike, I think that there's, we're gonna have to figure out how we're gonna address this at the Planning and Zoning Commission level, or you guys will. And I have all the faith. But it's, we've got a lot of excitement around this. We got to keep it moving. I think with that done, we're going to move on to the Go Dog North Shore project. And so I can just give a brief summary of this. And I know that, Mike, I think you've been talking with them a little bit more. But the Go Dog North Shore organization is interested in working with the city to open up a spot for they understand this might be a temporary thing, for a parking area, 4 to 6 cars, and maybe I'm on the wrong spot here. They basically want to use city land to develop a dog park adjacent to, like, across the street from the existing horse arena that they have been using, because the access to that is being cut off. So I don't know, Mike, if you have more details for that would be beneficial for the council.
We have
We
more
do have
guests
their
that are be joining us, Jay.
Oh, great. Then we can let them explain it.
Yes.
That's the best way to do it.
Smile, Millsy, you're on camera.
Oh, is he on?
I don't smile anymore.
Oh,
Just like old
is.
times, Dave. Just like old times.
Hi, everybody.
Is he the one we were waiting for?
I hope not.
Kathy should be joining us shortly.
Kathy's on her way.
Just making sure I have the note. I sent her a message to join.
Dave and I we can let Kathy do her talk too, but Dave and I both are on the Parks and Trail Commission. And actually had, Kathy was at that last meeting that we had. And of course, you know, we talked about where the process of Sawtooth Bluff is at in the joint powers agreement that's needed to get that going. I believe I can say that everybody there was excited to have this relatively low impact compared to some of the other things that have been kind of penciled into the project proposed area as the I guess litmus and like how does this process work in partnership agreements and the different things that we have to do. You know, we know that there'll be some impact. I mean, the parking and, you know, and they're willing to take on what that costs to develop it. You know, we had some, I think Dave, Chairman Deschamps from up in Grand Portage offered up help with you know, delineation and stormwater and that kind of work to be able to help. And you know, it was everybody there at that meeting was talking about their, you know, the kind of excitement and the forward progress that the Sawtooth Bluff project has after a little bit of downtime here, and the idea of Go Dog North Shore and the kind of forced exit that's having to happen with the use of the horse park right now as a co-use space, using, you know, using them and the excitement and yeah, to use them as the, like, let's get this started. So it was full support. Dave, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I don't think anybody is even hemmed and hawed about it. Everybody seemed pretty, you know, so, and they wanted to make sure that we knew that, you know, they wanted to make sure that the city council knew and the city knew that the Parks and Trail committee was in full support of working with Go Dog North Shore. Now I see Kathy's here, so I can there.
Hey, sorry, I'm late. I missed the text, so I'm not really sure how much of a recap that you gave, Anton, but just the quick and dirty is I sent in a proposal for y'all to look at. Unfortunately, the version I sent didn't include the map of the area that we were eyeballing, but it does include the place that the Sawtooth Bluff Master Plan identified as for a potential dog park in the future. And so what our group is asking is if we could get permission to get a head start on developing a 1 acre space that's on the corner of 5th Avenue West and the Gunflint Trail. It's basically the corner of the old Gunflint and the new Gunflint, directly west of the current horse and dog park. And I just want to be really clear. I stated this in the proposal that we are not asking for any public money. Our goal is to raise these funds and do any sort of construction or development internally. And so I want to put that out there right away. As Anton alluded to, we are on a timeline now where our access to the current off-leash space is going to expire in November of this year. So beginning in November, there will not be a dedicated place for people to exercise their dogs off-leash, safe from predators and traps and traffic. So given the amount of use that local residents and visitors to the county, how much these folks rely on an off-leash space, we are really hoping that we could get a piece of land identified so that we could start fundraising, because we know right now there will be a gap in time where there won't be an off-leash space. Even if you guys said tonight and all the stars aligned and we could move forward and start fundraising to build a new park, there's still going to be some time when people won't have a fenced in area to go to, because it'll take a while. But the longer we wait on it, the further behind we are. And our pitch is just that if this is hopefully the future use of that space, the Sawtooth Bluff area, we would love to get a jump start on it so that we can reduce that gap in time where people do not have access to off-leash space. I mean, I know the mayor's had his own issues with predators in the area. I myself have lost a dog to wolves, and which is why I've been on this odyssey since 2012 or so. And so it's important to me, and hopefully you guys find it important too. So, any questions or?
Thanks, Kathy, for that description. So you're basically just looking for council, like just a notion of support from the council for you guys to move forward with this before the Sawtooth Bluff development project goes forward.
That is correct. Yes.
And Anton and Dave, you guys are both on here. Does that have any bearing whatsoever on or would that have any bearing on the joint powers agreements that have been in the works? Because I know that part of the last agreement that I was privy to was basically saying, yeah, we'll do this as long as we can work out a management agreement. Do you see any impact on that? Maybe that didn't make any sense. Anton, Dave?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, thank you. Yeah, certainly it will have an impact only in that it needs to be included and spelled out. I think the kind of the long and short of Go Dog North Shore's proposal is that it's based on city land. And so they need permission to use the city land for this. Currently, the horse park, as shared as a dog park, is on county land. And that's managed by the Community Center Board of Trustees. And so now that it's leaving county land, it's kind of, out of our hands there. However, the Cook County Community Center Board of Trustees does support the project, had a motion of support. The Saddle Club also gave a letter of support, and then the Parks and Trails Commission gives support. And, it is a little confusing. And we have been, there's a lot of frustration from all parties involved, I think it's safe to say, but the Parks and Trails Commission really wants to do good. And they really want to make some headway on this, not necessarily this particular proposal, but the Sawtooth Bluffs plan. So as Councilor Moody stated, there is a lot of excitement and enthusiasm around this proposal because it is the first proposal for the use of that master plan area. The kicker is it's the first proposal is city land, and so it's up to the mayor and the city council to decide whether or not this fits within that master plan from the city's perspective. But the city did pass that master plan in the past. It's just that the management of the whole park concept has not been nailed down with that joint powers agreement. And that's on us, on the county, because as you know, we've been going through a lot of transitions. And now we have our new administrator, and things are moving along, but unfortunately, I don't have that to share with you right now. But that's, I'd say, forthcoming. So that's probably all I have to say. So it does affect it, absolutely, but it won't impede it. It won't hinder it. I think it'll help it. So.
Okay, that was really what my question was. So I appreciate that, Dave.
Well, did I answer it long enough?
You could. I mean, no, you did. You definitely did. I don't know, Anton might want to talk for a while too, so. We all missed you, Dave. We missed you so much.
Yes, I would, I guess, just say that I think I think that as Kathy said, that the idea of like this saying go isn't going to be that they're out cutting trees next week and this is going to happen overnight. There's going to be this lag time. So I think that separation of like, I mean, I think that from what Mike could interject, I guess, if I'm wrong, but what I heard from Tim Nelson at the Parks and Trails Board is that the Joint Powers Agreement is very close to being presented to the council. So it isn't, and very close, like, I think after the next meeting at Parks and Trails, we'll see that to be able to pass on to the council. So it isn't like really close and maybe next year, right? Like it's coming. So I think that there can be some of this overlap. I mean,
Did someone freeze up or did I freeze up?
that was me. I did.
Okay.
Sorry. It's embarrassing. There's going to be some overlap, right? So like if we give them the blessing, right? I think Kathy understands that this is going to be a dynamic process. I think that lets them put that out there that they can start their fundraising. I think we're going to have the loose ends wrapped up in the Joint Powers Agreement well before they're ready to figure out, you know, they're making a volunteer board on who's emptying the, you know, doggy doo bags 3 times a week. So I am in 100% in support of this. And if we're looking for a motion, I'd make it.
You're definitely welcome to, Anton.
So, Commissioner Mills, I do have one question. We are just talking about using the area that was planned to be used anyway, right? We're just jumping the gun a bit. Is that essentially what we're talking about?
Mostly correct. I guess I wouldn't call it jumping the gun because this fits within the approved master plan. It's, as I said, we just do not have a joint powers agreement on how to manage the area and the you know, the park as a whole. And but most of the park is going to need to be rely on these user groups, right? It's not going to be the county's coming in and building, you know, Disneyland. Maybe that's too often quoted. But it is going to rely on user groups. And so there are other user groups that are chomping at the bit, pun intended, to use, you know, this master plan as well. And so this is a really good first step. And I see there's a button here that says present now. Does that work? Am I allowed to do that? I do have the map, the satellite image that Kathy was referring to. She sent that to, I believe, the Community Center Board of Trustees as well as Parks and Trails, so I can share that if I have permission from whomever's in charge here.
David, that's been forwarded to everybody here too.
Well, then I don't need to. Thank you. But yes, it is in pretty much the exact place where that master plan designated with the bubbles. But
Well, where does that leave us then?
Looking for a second.
Oh, you're waiting for a second. Okay, I'll second it.
I'll third it.
Yeah, there we go. Good. Motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? So maybe, Anton, you can rephrase your motion just so that we know what we're talking about.
I make a motion that City of Grand Marais allows Go Dog North Shore access to the property identified in the Sawtooth Bluffs master plan for development of a dog park.
Okay. So that's the motion. I second it. Any further discussion on this?
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Is there going to be an agreement with somebody here that would just, I don't know anything about the joint powers agreement, so I don't have any of that background. But usually, in any other use of city property, we typically have, usually it's a license agreement, and it, kind of maps out what they can do when. I don't know if this is just going to be volunteers and it's going to be part of a city supervised program. I mean, so I'm only bringing this up just so that, if there needs to be an agreement related to this, that, there maybe that should be part of the motion or something like that. But you all know way more about this than I do. I'm just bringing that up as a comment.
Yeah, Chris,
I
I
think
kind of
that's a-
share some of those concerns too. I think that what they're asking for now is not the same thing, Anton, as what your motion was. That what they really want is just some support from the city to continue to work on the development. They don't need us to grant them access yet, because that really looks more like what Chris is talking about, where there's a license agreement that starts to spell out terms, and we're not there yet. There's a lot more details to figure out before we're at that point. So I think just some sort of motion of support to continue working on the development as they've presented it to you is probably good enough.
What do you think, Anton?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, I wasn't trying to give carte blanche. I mean, I understand, I guess, based in the previous discussion, of like how the process has to work. I totally agree with Chris. I mean, that's why it's easier when Mike writes what the resolution numbers are and everything. We just get to read them versus on the fly. So, yeah, so I would make a motion in support of further development of Go Dog North Shore, ability to develop the off-leash dog park on the Sawtooth Bluff Man location.
Okay, Sam,
better?
I'm glad that I asked you to clarify that. Yeah, I'll still second that. So I think that now we understand what this is. So this is a motion in support of Go Dog North Shore continuing to pursue the development of a dog park in line with the Sawtooth Bluffs master plan on that location. Any further discussion? Hearing none, go through.
Mr. Mayor,
Oh, yep, go ahead.
can you see everyone on the screen or no?
I think Jay is
I
on his
can't
phone
see
and
people.
Can't see anyone unless they're talking.
That's why I'm asking for verbals.
I only speak when prompted, so I'll stop doing that and speak up when you're asking for that. I guess the plan to me seemed fairly well spelled out, and really what's needed is a management agreement between the user group and the property owner. But besides that, I think that the plan is fairly well spelled out, including boundaries and the intended management of the park. So I'm not sure exactly what other details, and I'm wondering if indeed the more specific map is included in the agenda. All I see
There is a map there.
Yeah, all I see is the bubble map of the Sawtooth Bluff site development ideas, and then it goes down to Smith Law, versus the satellite image that shows the actual boundaries, the first phase of the fence lines, as well as the second phase of the fence lines. And so I don't know if that would help people. It's certainly, I needed to see that to be more comfortable with it. So I don't know if others would need that as well, but I'm just not sure what other information would be needed to give permission. But I think Attorney Hood's point is well taken. There certainly does need to be an agreement, and that does need to be worked out. But I believe the plan does spell out the intended management. And I guess maybe I should pipe down here because it's not my plan. But that's how it's been presented to the Community Center Board of Trustees as well as the Parks and Trails Commission. So.
Kathy is quiet.
Okay, thanks, guys. so one thing the ultimate goal that I'm really trying to achieve for this moment in time is to be able to say that I have a commitment from the city of Grand Marais or whatever government entity that we're working with to seek out funds, because we're talking about for me a substantial chunk of change that we're going to need to raise, and so to seek out grants. And in order for most grantors to give money to a nonprofit, they need to know there's a commitment from the landowner, if you are not the landowner. So that's like the first step, and that's really what I was hoping to receive out of this tonight. And absolutely, we need to get into an agreement, and there's a lot of other work that needs to be done. But what I'm wondering is if, the motion that you passed, or maybe you're going to tweak more, I don't know. But if whatever you say tonight in support of this gives me permission to say, yeah, the city of Grand Marais is behind us, and you have our word, and maybe I might even need a letter of support from you all at some point when I am seeking funds. So that's what I'm really hoping to get right now at this moment in time. Does that make sense?
That's kind of what I understand Anton's motion to be, but maybe that's, Anton, is that what you understand it to be?
Yes, that's my intention.
And that's great. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding correctly, and that if you do pass this tonight, that I can hit the pavement tomorrow, and I'm not going to raise some funds that then in 6, 8, 12 months from now, when we get closer to fruition here, all of a sudden the rug is pulled out from under us and we have nowhere to use this money. So that's kind of the fear. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Okay, thank you. And then I'll butt out here. Just again, really quick, want to just say thank you for your support, and it means a whole lot. And and for the time as well.
Well, I would just say, unless Chris or Mike, I guess I'd look to you guys if my motion, if anybody remembers it, is adequate enough to make sure that, that process and Kathy can feel comfortable moving forward with, as stated. Do we need to do anything else?
Well, I don't think you're going to be able to do anything to guarantee that Kathy feels comfortable. I think that this is another step that clarifies that this is the city's intention to have a dog park developed here. And that's probably the best you can do right now with the level of detail that's available. So, there is no guarantees in life, right? Just like we're moving forward with the risk that they're not going to be successful in putting this together. But we know that it's their intention to do so, and it's our intention to help them and make it happen.
That sounds like where I'm at with it. Any other thoughts? We do have a motion and a second on the table. So any other discussion? Sorry, let me put you all on the screen so I can see everybody. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Anton, your vote?
Aye.
Michael, your vote?
Aye.
Craig, your vote?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. Motion passes. Thank you, Anton, Dave, Kathy. Look forward to working with you more on this. Moving forward.
Thank you,
All
Mr.
right.
Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Moving right along. So the next thing I'm gonna hand this over to Mike to explain some of the intricacies of it, because there's a lot of different moving parts to it. So with that said, Mike, you can introduce this one and do what we have with this.
Yeah, maybe it would be better to just hear directly from the requesters.
Okay, Jeremy, you're here. You're on.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks
David.
for sitting around. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. No problem. It's fun, actually. David and I are here together to talk about this. It might be better for David to start the ball rolling since he's got more information directly from the engineers involved and everything. We can't hear you, David. You might be muted.
Unmute yourself. Should be a button on the bottom of your screen on the left-hand side that looks like a little microphone. Oh.
Oh, there you go. That was the wrong button. So maybe I'll start us off. So as you know, we've got the big dig going on in the parking lot at the back. Still can't hear you, David. There should be a microphone button. It's going to be red with a slash going through it. If you click it, it'll make it white.
You may have to tap your screen for the button to appear.
Sorry about this, guys.
Yeah, technology, man. I think
Right.
I've been on like 6 Zoom calls in the last week, and each one there's something goes wrong.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's
What about now?
Yep.
No?
There you go.
there we go. We got you, David.
Oh, boy. Beautiful. Okay. Yeah. I think, well, I guess, does anybody have any background at all other than Mike on this? If not, I'll just start really from the beginning.
Just what's in the packet.
Okay. So Jeremy has, obviously, everybody knows Jeremy's property, the hotel. We have the little vacant lot between Jeremy's hotel and the Java Moose. And he and I share a parking lot in the rear of both those properties. MDOT's doing the reconstruction of Highway 61, and their contractor is also doing the work for Minnesota Pollution Control that's cleaning up some of the sites underneath Highway 61 and our parking lot area. And so about a year ago, they came to us and they said, hey, since we're going in there and tearing up your parking lot and going to be cleaning up the soils, and we're going to be doing the same thing under Highway 61, you know, and then we got to go back in and put the parking lot back down and pave it. You know, what do you guys want to do? Because, you know, we have that parking lot, unfortunately, does not have any good drainage at all. And so we hired Northland Consulting Engineer in Duluth to take a look at it about a year ago. And they studied it every which way they could imagine. And they said, basically, with where your elevation is with your parking lot, 1.5 to 2 feet lower than Highway 61, I don't know that there's really any way for you guys to run your stormwater from your parking lot into the Highway 61 reconstruction project. So they looked into that and they said, no, it just doesn't look like the Highway 61 stormwater system is going to be able to work for you guys. So the best solution would be to put a catch basin in the center of your parking lot, slope the parking lot down so that the water drains to the center of your parking lot into a catch basin, then put a storm drain pipe going east out the 2nd Avenue and tie into the city storm sewer system. So I mentioned this to Mike about a year ago. We talked a little bit about it, and he said that the storm system on 2nd was in bad shape and probably wouldn't be conducive to handle the water. So we caught a little bit here between a rock and a hard spot there in that regard. So we really didn't have a solution. And so we just thought it was not prudent to just go and put the parking lot back down and just leave it the way it is and just let the water stand there for the next, 15 or 20 years. And it's just a constant maintenance problem. So we still believe that the most prudent thing to do is to run the water over to the city storm sewer on Second, but to do that, the city storm sewer would have to be, fixed and upgraded to handle our water. So that's why we wanted to talk with city council about this. So what I did was I had Northland Consulting go and design how that would work. And so they put together a sketch and a design of what would need to be fixed on Second Avenue. And then I had the MDOT contractor give us a preliminary bid based on the cost of fixing the storm sewer on Second Avenue, and then the cost of our piping on our property. And so he gave us those costs. He gave us a preliminary, that's pre having full-blown engineering drawings done, but it's probably not too far off. And so he had come up with a cost, an initial preliminary cost of about $25,000 for the Second Avenue improvements, and then I think $13,000 or $14,000 for the improvements on our parking lot. So unfortunately, today I got an email from the MDOT contractor thinking since he's already on site, we would probably get the best deal without, since he's already mobilized. But he sent me an email today saying that because of his tight schedule with MDOT having to hit certain timelines to finish the job in town, he probably would have to charge us more money to try to pull this together. I don't know, bring in more crews or whatever, and that it could potentially be another $15,000. So, but anyway, I think right now is the big picture is just trying to figure out, one, can we solve that problem? We haven't, gone to Thorson yet, talked to Randy to see if she's got the ability to do it and, if she would be any cheaper or competitive. But the whole thing is they're tearing it up right now. And so they're not going to pave until July. And we thought, well, maybe we could figure this out and fix it between now and July. And if we can't, then, and it can't, we can't put all the pieces together to do it by July, then I guess when Jeremy, redevelops, things on the hotel next year, we could address it then. But so that's kind of where we're at. And we were hoping that the city would help participate in fixing their, storm sewer to allow us to be able to drain into it.
Okay, thanks for all that information, David. From what I understand, and Mike, you can step in here too if I start to stumble on the information here. From what I understand, the decision in the Highway 61 redesign project was to abandon that Second Avenue storm sewer because it was in such bad repair and because it was deemed that it wasn't going to be an effective drainage avenue based on what we have in the other locations. So I'm not sure that is going to be part of the solution really right there, because we don't have the city doesn't have an interest in improving that facility because our stormwater needs are met in other ways. I do also, I know that you've been talking with Mary Somnus from the EDA about other funding opportunities and things like that. I think that's really great. And that might be with IRRB or with the EDA. I think that might be a really good way to find the grant money or such. Even speaking to Soil and Water might be a really great place to talk about ways that you can find the funding to deal with that when the redevelopment of the properties happens. So that's those would be. I guess I don't want to say that the city is not going to participate in the Second Avenue project, but the city doesn't have any interest in it, and so there's really there's not really a compelling reason for us to go through and do that work when our stormwater needs are being met. And I do think that there's also ways that you can solve your problem through working with Marais and other agencies to get some grant money during the reconstruction. That would probably work better for you than putting in a whole catchment basin and trying to run it over to Second Avenue, which doesn't exist. So I don't know, Mike, maybe you can jump in too and give a little bit more explanation, but that's the summary that I've come up with, I guess, in looking at these options.
Yeah, I think you covered it, Jay.
Can I ask a question? I mean, not, just all I have is this one page, right? The stuff that got drawn up, but like, is there a reason why they can't go out to the north into the stormwater that's under the highway to the north? Why they have to? I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking,
Yeah, from my understanding, from what the Northland consulting engineer said, it's too much lower than the highway. So there's a 1.5 foot drop between the center of our parking lot where we'd want to funnel the water.
Right. No, I understand that, but you're going subgrade down into the stormwater, right? I mean, isn't it? You're not just dumping it over the curb into the gutter. You're going underground connect.
Correct. Yes.
So why can't they go? You know what I mean? Like, obviously the stormwater in the highway.
I'm not an engineer, so I can't answer that. But from what they said, that it's just too much of a grade. I think because they want to do a 4 foot catch basin for the storm drain, and David can correct me if I'm wrong, then trying to get that to go 1.5 foot up to where the storm drainage is on 61 is problematic. At least that's what they've come up with so far.
We had Northland talk to MDOT's engineer and their construction, the guy that's in charge of construction. And because that was the first thing we thought a year ago. Why not try to see if we can't pipe it into MDOT's storm sewer? But they just came back and said it's no can do.
Well, and we know Wisconsin Streets works, and we did ask them to figure out if there's a way to get it through to Wisconsin Street, because that's works, that's already working.
Right.
But with the buildings there, it makes it a little bit of a challenge to start putting the storm drainage system jetting underneath buildings.
Yeah, that's not a good idea.
Right. And especially if you need to ever access those, like for instance, we need to in Second Avenue. So I guess the main thing that we're looking at is Second Avenue seems to be the only way to keep my building from flooding. One of the problems is it floods every spring. If we get a hard rain, it just starts coming in the back of the building, and that's not conducive. And there are storm drainage systems around us, and there used to be one on one side on Second Avenue, and I guess there isn't now. So it just seems like it's a necessary thing for our parking lot to have proper storm drainage, and we're just trying to find a way to do it in conjunction with city services. And just to be clear, all I want is for us to find the right solution here, for us to find the way that works and that makes it work for everybody involved.
So
Understandable.
Anton, I asked LHB about this because LHB is MnDOT's design engineer on this project, and they're also our city engineer. And they wanted to see some design work. They hadn't seen any design work, and nor have I, about what this might look like in the parking lot. So, I mean, if there's a design out there that's been done that answers that question for you, I haven't seen it.
You want to see the design of the engineering design of the work of the sketch that we sent you? showing our catch basin and piping over to Second Avenue and how that would all work?
More importantly, I want my engineer to see it, and so I can
Yeah.
ask him the same question that Anton just asked.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and the only thing I say is that we know that because of the big dig, right, that there's all kinds of depth there, and I don't know typically how deep stormwater culverts are set for the systems, but I know that we have, and maybe Northland's seen those, what the proposed, elevations are for when they put in new stormwater through Highway 61. But to me, you shine a flashlight down at any one of the storm drains in town. I mean, it's not like 5 feet down, it's down there. And so I guess if you guys are, I don't know. I mean, because then that's, not a lot of extra. You guys would have to take care of that, but there isn't any other thing that the city would have to do, to do that, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe they said no, it's not possible. I don't know if engineers have talked to LHB or if it's just like somebody talking to MnDOT, because that's a different situation. I'm sure MnDOT doesn't want to add it.
Yeah, I think they talked to LHB, and what I can do is I can have Northland call Mike and walk Mike through why they don't think it'll work.
I've talked to Northland.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk to anybody. I want to see their design.
Okay, again, you want to see their design of our catch basin going out to Second Avenue and then tying into when you say you want to see the design, they got to design it. Okay. So
Yeah,
are
but
you saying?
they've already made some decisions based on elevations and all kinds of information that they must have gathered, and I don't have any of it, and neither does my engineer.
Okay, so again, we didn't want to get too far ahead of ourselves and design something if we were not getting any cooperation. Does that make sense?
Not really, no, because you're asking us to commit a significant amount of money towards something that we don't have any information on.
They're working on that right now. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's actually really important for us at this stage to go ahead and get whatever we can to the city so that we can have a conversation based on numbers and figures. And I also think it's possible that we could take some more exploration and see if there is some other way for us to hook up to 61. I am totally open to that. Like I said, I just want to find the right solution that works for everybody. Based off of what they've told us so far, their solution is Second Avenue, but we can get thorough here and make sure everything is in order. And it matters to me that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. So I hear you guys, and I just want to make sure everything's in order before we do that.
Understood, Jeremy, and I appreciate that attitude. I mean, we understand you're putting a lot of energy into your redevelopment, and it would make sense to do that in a way that prevents water damage.
Exactly. Exactly. And it needs to be the best way, and that's all I care about.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Northland last week said they would start working on plans that they could give to a contractor to bid it up more appropriately than just, giving us a conceptual. So they said that'd probably take them 2 weeks. So that would have the depths and all the stuff you're looking for.
I mean, because even looking at the engineered set that we have right now that shows both the plan view and elevation view of what they're proposing, there's elevations there that even if we looked at, we could dig somewhere through our documentation. I mean, not that it's our call to make, it would be the engineer's call to make, but we have proposed depths on water, sewer, and stormwater in the Highway 61 corridor. So a cursory glance, at least, at looking at how those numbers in the 600 range vary, you know, from bottom of their holding pit in, I mean, I would assume that, you know, again, the problem with this though is it's taking everything east and then south, right? So looking at, you know, where that needs to happen to go north, but it looks like they put a little bit of effort into seeing what actual elevations are on site. So yeah, again, I think getting that information to Mike to get into LHB's hands to look at what those elevation depths are in the stormwater, in the corridor, not outside of the corridor, would be beneficial.
And there's a question that should probably be answered as quickly as possible, and that is, will the city be participating financially in this project or not? If the answer is yes, then it's much easier for the property owners to go to the east if we're going to pick up the bill to install the pipes in 2nd Avenue West, and then there's really no need to do any looking at MnDOT. If the answer is no, then finding a way to go to the highway right away seems like a lot less construction involved.
I mean, guess that depends on if we can go to the highway.
Yeah.
Like, so that's the point. Like, we actually, I don't know if that question can even be answered at this point, because we actually have to find out if we can even hook up to 61, which we need to do. That's our job. We've got to do that.
Well, and this is David, and I asked them a year ago, Northland, to see if that can be done. So if they drop the ball, then I'll have to deal with that.
Right.
But
well,
I
just
asked them a
because
year ago.
MnDOT said no, I mean, they probably don't want their project to be any more complicated than it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also a partner in that project and can participate that way if we can find a solution that's easier for you to implement by working through MnDOT. That's the way to go. I just think the idea that, I mean, we've got drainage in parking lots and storm sewers in downtown right now, and we don't have any 4-foot deep catch basins in downtown. Most of downtown doesn't have storm sewer because it's so flat. You know, the places where it exists, it's pretty shallow. Most of the pipes around City Hall and across the street are 2 feet deep at the bottom. Not, you know, the top of the pipe is pretty close to the paved area. So it might be that the engineers need to be a little more flexible in what they're thinking about building too, to make this work.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, there's no doubt you can drain it to the east and south. There's just an awful lot of stuff in the way that'll need to be torn out and reconstructed.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that.
Be a sufficient thing for right now to move forward by looking into the connection to Highway 61. I mean, to me, it seems like the proximity of Highway 61 to the area that we're looking to drain, I mean, it's right there. And I mean, we might be facing some significant, you know, height differences for that sort of situation, but I would prefer to exhaust that example first to see if that's an easier, faster, cheaper solution than looking at other potentially, you know, ripping up 2nd Avenue and, you know, working on replacing pipes and to the tune of, you know, 5 digits of expense that we don't need, nor may not have the desire to do. Does that sound like a way we can move forward to start working on this? I know that there's a time frame on this. We're definitely pushing the envelope, and I feel like we could probably crunch some numbers and look at some depths pretty quickly to figure out if this is even a possible thing. And like Mike said, MnDOT is working. We're partners in this project. They're working with us on this. So if there's some changes that we would like to make, they'll hopefully work with us on that. So I mean, that would be my preference, would be to try and exhaust that, and we might be able to exhaust that very quickly if they just say nope, and we aren't able to discuss it with them, and the elevations don't work, then that one's pretty easy to figure out.
Yeah. I hear you guys on that. It seems like the prudent way to go is for us to get our whatever specs our engineers have gotten together so far to your engineer, and for us to see if we can do our due diligence on if we can connect to 61. And like you said, exhaust that option. I get it.
Well, I think we'll move forward with that then, and we'll be in touch with you guys about what we discover. And you definitely send us what you got so that we can work with you on it. So,
Okay, great.
all right, thank you for your help, and hopefully we can figure something out here pretty quick.
You got it. Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
All right,
Bye-bye.
good night.
Good night.
All right, so we'll keep moving along here. The next one is
Jay,
an animal
before
pound.
you move on,
Go ahead.
I really do think you need to address at some point the question of, are you going to participate financially in this project or not? If the answer to that is yes, we could have done this a year ago. The only reason that it's taken as long as it has is because I've told them that it's their responsibility to pay for those improvements. So if you want me to say something different to them, you need to tell me.
The only way that I would see the city participating financially, and other council members, please weigh in on this, is if it was in a partnership with an AEO, or not AEOA, an IRRR grant, infrastructure grant or something like that, where we weren't footing the bill out of pocket. I don't see that it isn't part of our infrastructure, like our stormwater infrastructure plan. So I don't see it as a city priority for infrastructure work. So I don't know what the rest of the council members think, but that's my take on it.
I have a question. That whole area is getting tore up right now, isn't it? How far are they going? Right to the Harbor Inn's building, or not quite?
I think that the extent of what they're doing is there right now.
Yeah, and then they're going west. How far to the Java Moose parking lot?
I don't think they're digging up more.
Is that at a higher elevation there?
I don't know.
Well, what I'm thinking is that whole area is dug down about 8 feet right now. Did anybody look into maybe, instead of current elevations, changing? Is the problem that the water runs into the back of that building? The building's too low?
I mean, we can't really know.
I don't know. I'm just
what
thinking
anybody looked
changing
at
the
or-
slope and grade of a new parking lot is an opportunity they have to do right now.
Yeah.
That they could do.
And I
which
think
might-
if it would have been clear a year ago that we were absolutely not participating financially in the reconstruction of Second Avenue, then they may have looked at those options more. But now, here they are asking us to participate financially with the assumption that that's still the easy path, when some of these other things, I agree, there might have been an opportunity to look at, can we just change how this is all, as long as it's all a 10-foot hole in the ground, why don't we rethink this? But that's not what happened, so.
Yeah, but when they go to fill this in now, they could change their elevation of their current parking
They could.
lot, and it could all run out into Second Avenue West, and they may not need a catch basin for storm sewer. That's the question I have.
Yeah, I think that's something, and
could-
again, like,
they
if
could-
we're not gonna participate financially in the reconstruction of Second Avenue West storm sewer because we don't need it,
Right.
then I would expect that they would look at more options than, just sending the pipe in there. So let's hope they do.
You make a really good point, Craig, that there's lots of different elevations that can move around in this project, and that can move
Especially right
around.
now, because it's all tore up.
Right, and that can solve their problem, both in the reconstruction of their own building too. So
Right.
that's a good thought about that. Other counselors, would anyone else does anybody else have anything to say about
Well, I mean,
participate?
I would say Jay, you said 5-figure impact to the city. I sure don't see it being in that range. I mean, I guess I'd be surprised that, I don't even understand with the detours and with how traffic is supposed to be moving through, to lose Second and part of Wisconsin. I mean, I just don't understand how that would even tie into all this planning of how we're going to shuffle traffic around for the course of the summer. I think, again, yeah, I was standing there. I went this morning and was looking at the hole because you see those giant piles of rocks. So I walked over to the fence and was watching them work there on 2nd Avenue up by Dairy Queen. And, you know, I mean, that's as close as they're getting to the building where they're at and where their safety fence is up right now. There's a pretty blank palette as far as how all that's, you know, what could get filled back in there or what could get put in before it gets filled in or as it's getting filled in to make that less of a situation than what's, you know, what they're proposing. I don't think that there's the elevation of an existing property is not really our problem. I mean, I don't think, I mean, not to be a jerk about it, but I mean, I just don't see how that is our, sorry, sneeze. I guess I just don't see how we should incur anything there, right?
I would agree with you, Anton. And with the points that Craig said about lots of different elevations that we need to look at here that were possible, I think that there's likely some other solution that can be put in place here that would be a lot cheaper. And the 5-figure that I was talking about was what David himself said of the $25,000 estimate for the replacement or mitigation, I guess, of the 2nd Avenue storm sewer. So I don't know how much it would cost. It would be pretty expensive, but I think that there's lots of other things we can do to solve the problem.
Yeah, and I would want to cooperate with them and support them and help them in any way, but you know, I don't see this as necessarily our problem. Again, not to be a jerk, but you know, yes, we'll help them, we'll support them, and like you're pointing out, you know, IRRV or whatever we can do to help connect them to 61. You know, sure, you know, we'll do that. But in terms of redoing seconds, I'm not seeing that as our responsibility.
Thanks for the clarity, everybody. I appreciate it.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to the animal pound update. And I believe, Anton, you're the only one who really has an update on this. So lay it on us.
Come on, everybody. What?
What do you mean?
The one that did what I was supposed to do?
What?
You're the only one that had a job.
Oh, okay. So I followed up with, you said that I'm the only one that has a job or had a job?
You said you were going to do stuff.
Okay. Yeah, so we did, I followed up after the discussion last time about what the actual consensus was coming from the EDA about using one of the lots up there. And we had a meeting last night, the EDA, and I brought this up and spoke to I was trying to bring tonight to some understanding as if they would still be interested in having it happen up there if we chose lots that maybe weren't as saleable as the one that was previously talked about when, you know, the sheriff and animal allies or advocates came in front of the board. And there are a couple lots that are on the west side of the business park that have a lot, basically from Cedar Grove Lane to the snowmobile trail, about halfway back on both those lots. I believe it's lot 6 and lot 7 in block 5 are all wetland. And so the buildability of those, as you know, or actually, I think both said as owner occupied. You know, there was some hesitation about turning an owner occupied lot into a dog park. But of course, there's conversation and legislation moving through right now to actually allow owner occupied on every lot in the business park, not just in the initial batch that we deemed that was okay. You know, really, if you burn up 50% of the buildable area because you can't build on it, is there opportunities for somebody that wants to build a 20 by 30 with a few parking spaces similar to the size of the dog pound to take advantage of that? Probably. But would they also then be able to like buy one of the many other lots up there that have maybe mitigated wetlands on, so they don't have the same issues that they have to deal with? It seems like a much better likelihood. So what the EDA said was they would like to hear what the proposal would be back with an actual understanding and a drawing, and not just, you know, the way I understood they took it was like, what? Like, what is this? Like, this is a city issue. Why are you building it on city land? And it's like, well, it's not just a city issue. It's a city and county. And so it needs to be, you know, Scott Harrison brought up the idea that, you know, we burdened City of Grand Marais, basically burdened the EDA with the idea of selling these lots. So, you know, what's going to happen with, which, you know, is fine. But what's the, there's the assessment, right? You know, $13,000 something per lot or whatever the remaining assessment is. Like, is the city, if the EDA says, like, you guys can have this to build this facility, is the city obviously just going to absorb that, you know, lack of sale, loss of sale into what, you know? And I said, I don't know, that, you know, we just have to talk about that. But I don't think that they are necessarily opposed to the idea, but I think they just want a clearer plan, kind of similar to what we talked about earlier tonight with one of the, you know, ordinance changes of like, this is where, this is what, this is the size, you know, let's see what it is.
Okay. We know those things, I believe.
We do, but they weren't presented with that.
Well, we know them, but we don't know them. I mean, we have got a preliminary drawing. Nobody's actually looked at the piece of property specifically and said, this is the spot where it makes the most sense to put it. So I think that there's a few steps, and we know what they are now, to take the information we have and go back to the EDA at their next meeting with what they're asking for, which is a specific ask.
Yes.
Here's what's going to get built, here's where it's going to go, and here's how we're going to deal with the assessment. We can do that.
I think if we came back, whether it was the group that was presenting to us, or if I take that back and, you know, present that as this is what we want to do, you know, if that information can get generated and those answers or questions answered, you know, I mean, I can't say that it's like a slam dunk, but I also, you know, I think that would be, there'd be less vagaries, right? There'd be more solid concrete. This is what we want to do. One of the other things that was asked was, you know, if Dr. Samari up at Cedar Grove Vet Clinic, you know, somebody had mentioned that maybe there was a possibility that he was talking about turning the lot that he'd bought uphill from the vet clinic into like a boarding facility, and would he be interested in some sort of partnership that would take on these animals? And I did talk to Nodder, and he's not interested at all in doing that. He's, you know, overly busy, and the idea of taking on boarding is not something he's interested in doing. So, you know, that kind of scratched that off the list as a solution. And, you know, that's I guess what I have. So if Mike, I don't know who puts that information together. I've never seen, the drawings that were done, or, if it's as simple as an overlay that we do, if some we help to present it back to EDA, then that's great. I can help with that or try and steer that through and see what we come back with. But I can't speak to the answer of, I don't understand, I guess, really the assessment and how all that, when that thing got developed, how all that goes down. But anyway.
Well, we've got another council meeting scheduled before the next EDA meeting, so we can set as a goal to put together a draft proposal, have the council look at it at their next meeting, and then present it to the EDA for their June meeting.
Okay. Yeah, and I did I did look, even though I did go up and look at, Tom Taboda, and I totally forgot about that other storage building that's outside of the gate. That's where I guess I had in my head where that building's sitting. And it's like, oh, shoot, now there is not very much space between that building and the highway. And I don't think that that's what I foresee as a great welcome and use of that property, adding something else, closer to the highway. I think the mix of, somebody said, well, if we're turning all these into owner occupied, so you're going to have potential residential mixed with business up there. Like, what if there's dogs barking? And it's like, well, they decided to build a house in an industrial park. I mean, they're able to do their business and their house at the same place. I don't know how it's any different than if somebody was, whatever, working in their repair shop or whatever else was happening, So, yeah, anyway, I think it'd be great to bring something forward at the next meeting so we can all look it over and see if we feel comfortable with me bringing that to the EDA.
Sounds good. Thanks, Anton. Appreciate your willingness to work on that. All right. Anything else on the pound? Mike? Nope.
No, I think this is
Okay.
the way to keep moving on it.
All right. Sounds good. We will keep moving on it. We also have now council priority first review. Patrick went around and did some activities with us about council priorities. So, Patrick, I don't know if you're going to run through that quick, what you have planned, but
Sorry, we have
into it.
Patrick hiding behind a screen here. We can't really get him on camera very easily. The original plan was that we might want to set aside some time on this agenda for you to discuss the preliminary results. Due to the fact that Councilor Swearingen's not here and that it's already the time we were hoping to be done, I guess I don't know how deep you want to get into it. So I would say this. If you feel the need to have a group conversation, then we can do some right now, or we can schedule another Zoom meeting before the next council meeting to have a half an hour or so to talk about the results. Or you can try to just provide me feedback individually if you don't think there's a need to talk about it. The idea is, unless you want to push the timeline back, that at your next council meeting 3 weeks from today, or another meeting scheduled around that time, you're going to go through some exercises where you start to prioritize these categories and into things that you want to put on your list and things that don't make the cut. So you've all done that before, or most of you have anyway. You know what it's like. That's work that can be done individually as well, but only if we like the grouping of the comments in the categories that are on the list. So that you've only had them for a couple days here. I guess I wouldn't expect you to have a lot to say about it, but I'm hoping you can give me any feedback you've got.
Well, I can say that I looked through all of the information and it was very interesting to see who commented what. I mean, for me personally, I would be willing to get into a, to see what the next steps are. I don't think that I don't need to have any more review of what the information that was gathered is. It's pretty clear, what people said and the summaries that that Patrick put together and sent out were, understandable based on the comments that were the raw data that was collected. So I don't know what the other counselors think, but that's what I think. Be glad to have more of a conversation on it too, if that's what everyone wants to do. Anyone? Just move on?
I mean, I did, review all the information that we have so far. Yeah, and I mean, I can go over it, of course, on my own, but I do appreciate doing it with you guys. But I can also skip that and just talk to Mike and whatever and get myself up to speed, because I know you guys. This is a repeat for you, but it's all new for me. So it's my 2 cents.
Well, this is different from how we've done it in the past too, Michael. So it's similar but different for us.
I think I'd be happy having something in between now and our next meeting to try and get all of us together and have the conversation and, make sure Kelly can be here. And that's where I'm at.
Sounds good.
Okay, we'll put that together. I think the benefit of that is that you see the comments now, but you don't necessarily get any of the background from the person who made them and what they meant. And sometimes the magic of it is talking to each other about where they're coming from and what they meant, rather than what the actual words are that they wrote down. So I suspect that we'll end up with a better product if we do that meeting. To piggyback on what Michael said, I really don't think this particular council priority session is much of a starting from scratch sort of idea, and I think that was borne out in your first exercise, that the previous list that you had prioritized is still pretty relevant, and that we're not likely to deviate a lot from it. We still have a lot of work to do on those priorities. But there also are some new concepts that I think are going to get included in the new list based on what we're seeing. And if nothing else, like of the 5 or 6 that you pick, 1 or 2 of them are really being actively worked on at any time. And I think the ones that were active last year are not the ones that are going to be active this year. So that'll be good to talk about that, I think, in a group setting.
Sounds good. If that works for everybody, then we'll, we got echo. Then we'll just move on to the next thing. So we'll do council and staff reports. Anton, your update?
I kind of talked a bunch about it. It's covering what we discussed with EDA and Parks and Trails. And I don't think that I have really too much more to add, from what we talked about. I kind of alluded to that, but there is legislation in right now, so we'll see what happens with the special session, which I'm assuming will happen based on things. And as far as what language will change and happen with the business park, there is, a handful of folks that are interested in moving forward up there and being able to have both their home and their business space. But those lots that are kind of left right now for that aren't, like I mentioned with the dog pound conversation, aren't super amenable. So I think seeing what happens when that is a go and what the timing means on that and when it's effective will be really interesting to see what increase we have in sales up there and folks being able to get their business into a home and also themselves. That's pretty exciting, I think.
Cool. That's it? Okay, Michael, you're up.
Yeah, that would be really exciting to have that go on up there. Yeah, I had planning and zoning, and we kind of went over everything that we had at planning and zoning. So I'm all done. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Michael. Craig?
Yeah, the park board met. Corey Stuckelberg, local artist, she placed 3 of her woodland caribou sculptures in the park. So if you guys are driving around the park, you'll see them. There's one obvious right when you go right down the hill into the park. It actually, when I first saw it, it's like, oh, there's a deer. But no, it was a sculpture. Yeah, anyway, so 3 of those are placed. We did approve a bunch of events for Harbor Park coming up. That takes us all the way to first week in September, actually. So there's going to be quite a few events going on down there. And we did recap on the boat ramp in the rec park. Work on that apparently is delayed a little bit, but it is going to start June or early July. And then that whole end of the park will be fenced off. There'll be no access to that area. That boat ramp will not be available for use, neither will the parking. So we're gonna have to get pretty creative on the one boat ramp that we have being used. Parking out on the point is gonna be very competitive for pickups and trailers. I hope that works out good for us, but anyway, so that work's gonna start. And what'd they say? They think that'll be completed by, well, the boat ramp, the end of October, but then the parking lot will be phase 2. That'll be 2022 for the parking area. And then for the POC, we had a short meeting and we approved, well, we had to choose some creative writing. We had 3 students submit some creative writing essays, which they were all very, very good. And Luis Ramberg was chosen for the first scholarship that we awarded. Sylvia Burka was awarded the 2nd place, and Abigail Stoddard was awarded 3rd place. And they all got a little bit of spending money to put towards their college educations if they choose to do that. And then the first place winner gets to get, well, that'll be submitted at a state level for the opportunity for another scholarship award. That's about all I have for that.
Very cool. Thank you, Craig.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, so I had a couple of meetings. I met with a new group that's called the Minnesota Mayors Together. So it's a group of mayors from around the state, both metro and outstate, that are working on legislative priorities for the state that are good for both metro area cities and for rural cities as well. The one thing that we talked about at this meeting was vaccinations and how we can continue the supply flow of vaccinations and also continue to keep ourselves safe. And our community has done pretty well with that, but there's a lot more that we can still be doing, both to keep ourselves safe and to continue pushing that vaccination rate higher and higher. So continue to get your vaccinations, guys. It's really, really great. The Active Living Steering Committee had a meeting last week, discussed a lot of the same progress on the same things. Starting tomorrow, the youth bike safety program will be starting, and they had the bike to school day was last Wednesday. Let's see what else was there. We're talking about they're continuing to work on getting the school zone work done, and also having getting that group identified as a state or a chapter of the Bike MN nonprofit, which will allow them to actually have some funds of their own, which is all pretty good stuff. Minnesota City's Climate Caucus had a meeting as well. That's largely a group of city councilors and mayors that discuss different legislative ideas for climate action for the state. We're doing a lot of the things that we talked about, such as putting in EV chargers and working on sustainability through solar, etc. The CEC, Creative Economy Collaborative, met as well. Spent a lot of time talking about the Morrison sculpture on the community connection. They said that yes, they do agree and are willing to work on the modified connection plan that we talked about at our last meeting. So that's all good. And I do believe that is all that I had. Yes, that was all that I had. So Mike, Kim, Patrick, do you guys have anything?
I don't.
Nope.
All right. Well, thank you so much for a good meeting. We worked through a lot of stuff today. We have some stuff we need to get done too, so we'll have to keep working. But we have no further business. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.